good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. You're very welcome to this World UX Roundtable. Although we have been talking about UX and specifically international UX for quite some time, this conversation is critical today more than ever before. The new global reality has triggered an unprecedented digital acceleration for businesses across every industry. Today, more than ever, companies need to become digital first to survive. And with that, it is crucial that those global digital experiences are comparable to the native user experiences. Successful digital forward businesses put CX and UX first and embed global readiness into both elements. This is World UX. And in this roundtable, we're going to discuss the why, the what, and the how of World UX. As Priscilla said, please feel free to ask any questions or add any questions with the Q&A button, and we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So first of all, I would like to give a very warm welcome to Tarja, Sergio, Pat, Alberto, and Ryan, and a special thanks to Ryan. He is in Seoul in Korea, and it's quite late in the evening for him. Thank you for being part of this roundtable, and welcome. I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists today, and then we're going to also ask for a little bit of information about you, the audience here with us this afternoon. So first off, Tarja Karjalainen, she's the localization program manager at Oura and is based in Finland. She's a longtime advocate of international UX and CX. She has previously led a team of UX writers and localization managers and has also run international UX-driven localization programs. She features in many industry blogs, podcasts, webinars, and she's also a regular speaker at LocWorld. And you may not know that Tarja's favorite time of the year is Christmas, and she loves to make unusual gingerbread houses. This year, she plans on making a gingerbread cuckoo clock. Welcome, Tarja.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Next is Sergio Valero Notari. He's the UX writing manager at Doctoralia in Barcelona. And he's also an online teacher with Creana, where he has created the first UX writing online course in Spanish. He's also offline lecturer and assistant professor on content strategy and UX writing, also in Barcelona. And Sergio loves to work listening to Final Fantasy and epic music tracks. He then feels like he's riding a dragon and throwing fire, just that with words. And when a song with any lyrics pops out, trance stage is finished. Next up, hi Sergio, sorry. Hi. Next up is Pat Higgins. He's localization lead at Verizon Connect in Dublin. And Pat's experience in the localization industry spans over 2 decades. He started as an engineer with Microsoft, and he's been a long-term champion of the UX and localization overlap and the importance of written content, quality written content for both. In his spare time, Pat makes liqueurs, where he adds spirits, gin or vodka, some sugar or sugar syrup, and flavorings such as fruits or herbs. So, you know, I think I can see a side business here for Pat. So looking forward to when we can meet again and maybe taste some of those lovely liqueurs. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you very much.
Next is Ryan Moroz. He's the head of UX localization at Line in Seoul, Korea. And he holds what many of us, or certainly I consider the ideal role. He oversees both UX writing and localization for the global messaging app, which is used by over 200 million people, and leads a team of linguists, microcopy experts, and storytellers. And again, Ryan, similar to Sergio, he loves music as well. He has seen hundreds of bands perform. He has occasionally even crossed the world just to see certain concerts. And not being able to see live music is his biggest complaint about the coronavirus era. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And last but not least, we have Alberto Ferreira. He's user research manager at Vodafone in London. He's also the author of Universal UX Design, Building Multicultural Experience, a reference must read in this particular topic. He's also a guest lecturer as part of the User Experience Design Master of Science at Kingston University in the UK. And Alberto is passionate about cinema. He has done theater in the past and is actually working on a screenplay about a Jesuit priest in war-torn Afghanistan. Welcome, Alberto.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again for being here, for taking part in the roundtable. To everybody who's joining us live today, we would love to know where you're coming from, your background, where you are in your journey, your awareness of UX and localization, what we've come to call world UX. So you're going to see a poll popping up on your screen in just a few moments, and we'd really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to fill it in. So I think we have that poll. Okay. Perfect. In the meantime, while you fill in the poll in your own time, we're going to turn over to our panel and ask them to share their experience, their journey, and specifically, why do they believe that it is key that UX design / UX research and UX content writing and localization come together. So Pat, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Yep.
With your 20 years experience in the industry.
All right, thanks, Maria. Hi, everyone. So I started in the loc industry back in '97. I was QA vendor for a while and then joined Microsoft as an engineer for about 14 years. It's 16 if you include some contracting time. When I left Microsoft, I was working in Office, which means we were localizing in about 100 languages. The last 6 years I've been with Verizon Connect. The role there is just the usual translation stuff, and then investigating requirements for going into new countries, and then you're talking to the devs about requirements for basically to prevent issues before they happen. Everybody knows prevention is better and cheaper. And so I think working with the devs to prevent stuff got my interest going in design. And then also with the text that we had to translate, sometimes we didn't have writers at the time, so some of the text wasn't the best. And so that got my interest in writing. And so I did some online courses for that. You looked into natural control languages, that sort of thing. Basically any kind of rule that would help me, guide me in getting better English text so that we had a better source for the translations. You know, simplify the text, lower the reading level, less technical terms unless it's industry specific, that sort of stuff. So that's where my interests in these areas have grown. And so why these three together? For me, they're all about creating the best design for the widest number of potential users, really. They each have a different starting point, but they all have the same destination. They take a different path to that same destination, and they perhaps face different problems, but they all have the common goal of trying to create that better product for the huge number of users that we expect and that we want. UX will bring the design, that's the fix. It's the solution to their problem, and that's great. But then content can sharpen that and clarify. It shows what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it. Because sometimes an icon on its own won't explain an issue, and you need the text. And then I feel that localization can help bring a wider world view to perhaps the other two disciplines that don't have that view. In the way a UX person might say, okay, this works for desktop, but not for mobile, but we need both. The localization person says, well, this works in English, but not French. It works for Western Europe, but not Eastern Europe. It works for Japanese and Chinese, but it won't work for BiDi. And you can be in the business of making the best product, but it is a business, and to get paid, you have to have something that users want. And so our job is to tell designers, you know, change X to Y to fix your issue, and it appeals to more people. So for me, all these three disciplines are needed to create the even better product for your customer, wherever they are, whatever their culture, whatever their language, and whatever currency they're paying you in. These three groups are the world UX, and they create the world product for the world user. And that's how I look at it.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Tarja, from your perspective, and as I mentioned earlier, you've been similar to Pat, a kind of a long time advocate. Why is it important, key, that these three elements come together?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been managing localization from this quite a wide perspective for a while now. And I've shifted, I started as a translator myself, and then I've been a UX writer, I've been on the vendor side, I've tried all these different hats. And now lately I've been shifting from looking at just the UI or a website to looking at experiences, international experiences, and looking at the entire user experience of a product. So it's about the whole journey the customer sees and experiences. And from the localization manager's point of view, it's really, really easy to see where the international user gets kind of forgotten, because that's where the language support usually ends. But then, you know, there are parts of the journey where you might not offer support in multiple languages, or you have neglected to see differences, for instance, in the way that these users like to use apps or browse or search for things. So these things are very easy to see. And that's kind of, it's a sad thing when you notice that this was designed for a particular set of users. And then there's this big part of the users who don't necessarily feel that this is designed for them. You know, for instance, being able to read a newsletter in your own language, or being addressed with your first name or your last name first instead of your first name first. Like, you know, this is a localization issue for newsletters and all of that kind of email messaging. So it's easy to see the gaps. And this is why it's really, really important to get these three things together. Like Pat mentioned, you know, we are designing the product for our user, and the user is our user, no matter where in the world they are and which language they speak. So that we need to make sure that we are giving the same kind of level of experience and same level of quality of a product to all our users, and kind of don't put them into this kind of language or culture or tier boxes, so to say. And it's really this cooperation of this kind of these three elements, UX, copy, and localization, where it's from the beginning, the design supports different languages and different cultures. It's designed for all users, not just 40%, and then the rest gets a one-to-one translation of that product. So this is really important. If you want to really ensure that kind of a global experience or a local experience for all your users, then you really need to bring all of these three elements together, and all of these people who work towards the same goal. So yeah, that's why I think it's really important.
Great. And Tarja, you alluded obviously to the design element, which is the beginning, really. Alberto, you're obviously coming from a perspective of UX design and research, and I'm wondering what's, again, from your perspective, why is it important? You're looking at it from quite a different angle to a localization leader, for instance. So tell us about your perspective.
Design has always been linked to localization in internationalization requirements and cultural adaptation. So it's really connected. But I think that one of the key things that we also have to think of as an industry is really the fact that localization teams are often put in a position where they don't feel emancipated enough to bring the feedback or bring the requirements that would be necessary for their customers, for the international users, to the table at an early enough stage. And when companies are more and more obviously moving to digital, moving to in this great initiative now with COVID-19 pandemic, with the digital acceleration, international markets are just as important or more important than whatever company the company happens to work in. So I think that we will see the rise of internationally minded design or UX that is geared towards a global market become more and more prominent. And also,
Alberto, sorry, we seem to have a little bit of audio issues. I don't know if it's perhaps on my side. You are fading every few seconds. I'm
His
not sure.
mic might be touching his skin and then blocking the voice.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, sorry for interrupting.
Okay, sorry. So I was just saying that in terms of the current climate, it's obviously more and more requirement for companies to be designing and exploring the experiences that they are deploying with international markets with a different set of priorities. And I think that localization plays a key role in that. And that's all part of a mindset shift as well that we as an industry need to consider. The way that localization is pitched a lot of times is basically about being a delivery method for translations or something that is meant to deploy a specific version of a product. And I don't think that in the current climate, it's going to be enough to take us as in the industry and also the business strategies that rule the international deployment far enough. And so part of it is to change the self-view of lock teams and to work more closely with designers and definitely work more upstream, being more involved in those work streams. But also the fact that the localization teams themselves also need to feel that empowered. They need to understand within the context of their limitations and the limitations of the company and the environment that they're in, how can they bridge those gaps? How can they actually become more acquainted with UX? And I work in research, in UX research. My team basically deals with research as a block. We deal with every international market as important a way as possible. So it's very easy to fall in this kind of waterfall down trickling kind of model where you basically have a master locale or a master language or a master version of something, and then everything else is just adaptations. And it's convenient, and it's definitely something that from a process point of view makes sense. But a lot of it starts with the awareness, and I think that that's one of the things that companies and localization industry in general need to move forward to and need to feel empowered enough to effect that change. And basically that's been also my personal path. I started off as a translator, then moved to software localizer, then moved into product management, transition, then eventually into UX research, because in order to be close to the customer, that's where it is. It's collecting data directly from the customer. And I think that bringing the localization experience was important in finding out, actually, every market is important. Every market has its own place and has its own requirements. We just need to find a way that as a company or in the industry, that we can actually bridge those gaps in an effective way with UX and design and effectively serving product strategy better that way.
Great, thank you, Alberto. No, I love the idea of the emancipation of the localization industry and sort of self-empowerment. So, and we'll certainly look at that a little bit more in detail later on. Ryan, to the outside world, it seems like you have this figured out already, right? You're managing UX and localization. Obviously, Line and yourself in your role already understand that this is critical. But how did it come about, and what does your current role look like?
Yeah, so at our team here at Line, we are definitely have the two integrated, UX writing and localization. It makes a lot of sense to have those two together. It creates a lot of challenges though as well, and those challenges will obviously vary depending on what your organization is like. And just to echo some of the thoughts of the other panelists, I agree completely that things are getting more globalized and everybody wants to conquer the world. At the same time, they want to do it usually in the mobile space. And in the mobile space, you're dealing with very small screens, very limited space. And if you want to meet all these users where they are around the world, you have to consider that in your design and then in planning out the content that goes in there. So those three things are very linked, I think. Just a little bit about me. Yeah, I moved to Korea to teach English. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I thought it would be a fun year adventure. I knew I loved language. Turned into 5 years, and I went back to the States and was trying to figure out how to use my Korean skills. And I got into gaming. So taking games that were developed in Korea and releasing them in the West. So, you have a lot longer time to deal with that. And you actually have a lot more space, a lot more flexibility. It's very fun. But after deciding to come back to Korea, I took a position with Line. And Line is an interesting company because our products are actually developed in Korea and Japan and serviced mainly in Japan, but we also are serviced basically in every country and in 20 languages. And so because I think that it grew out of this way that was sort of like you had, you sort of started from an international space, the idea of, being prepared for localization was pretty important from the beginning. So it's nothing that I personally started to have this, but I think it's very wise that our company has decided to do it. But, again, there's a lot of challenges as well if you have combining writing and localization. So you have to basically balance, how are you going to do the writing part, which is you want to be very deeply involved in all the aspects of the feature. You want to deeply understand the UX design. You want to deeply understand the content as well and the business needs. And then you also have to balance that with a localization part, which is this actually has to be translated into 20 languages. And if you have a lot of services to manage, like our team does, you quickly run into resource questions. And how do I actually do this great job for all these languages and still meet what tends to be very tight turnarounds in the mobile space? So that's why I think it's very important to consider these earlier, just like the other panelists have been saying. Don't think of it as an afterthought, like it often has been, but think about it as an integral part of the design. So yeah, that's my take on it.